top 10 real-life criminals who got away with murder is one of the most heinous crimes, and in an ideal world, justice would always prevail. However, in some chilling cases, the perpetrators of these brutal acts manage to evade capture, leaving their victims' families with unanswered questions. Some of these criminals are never caught, others escape punishment due to lack of evidence, and some manage to avoid conviction despite overwhelming suspicion. In this script, we will explore 10 notorious real-life criminals who got away with murder, examining their crimes investigations and the unresolved mysteries that still haunt us today. Number 1. In the 1960s to 70s, the Zodiac Killer. One of the most infamous and mysterious killers in history, the Zodiac Killer terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area during the late 1960s and early 1970s. The Zodiac is believed to have murdered at least 5 people between 1968 and 1969, though he claimed to have killed 37. The victims were typically young couples, shot in remote areas. The Zodiac's taunting letters to newspapers and cryptic ciphers made him a notorious figure. Despite extensive investigations and numerous suspects, including Arthur Lee Allen and more recently, Gary Francis Post, the Zodiac's identity remains unknown. The letters, which seemed to mock law enforcement, provided little in the way of concrete evidence. Why was the Zodiac Killer never caught? Was he one individual or part of a larger network? Did he stop killing, or did he simply vanish without a trace? Number 2. In 1947, the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia, was a young woman whose gruesome murder shocked Los Angeles in 1947. Elizabeth Short's body was discovered on January 15, 1947, severed in half and drained of blood in a vacant lot in Los Angeles. The brutal nature of the crime and the fact that her body had been carefully posed made it one of the most horrific murders in U.S. history. The case garnered extensive media attention, with police following multiple leads and interviewing various suspects, including men she had been seen with in the days leading up to her death. However, no solid evidence emerged linking any suspect to the murder. Some of the most famous suspects include Dr. George Hodel, a physician whose behavior and ties to the case seemed suspicious. However, despite claims by the police that Hodel may have been the killer, they never brought him to trial. Why has the Black Dahlia case remained unsolved for so long? Was the killer someone close to Elizabeth Short, or a complete stranger? Number 3. In 1912, the Villisca Axe murders. In 1912, a family of 6 and 2 house guests were brutally murdered with an axe in their sleep in Villisca, Iowa. Despite various suspects and investigations, the case remains unsolved. On the night of June 9, 1912, the Moore family, consisting of parents, Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 children, and 2 visiting children, were hacked to death with an axe while they slept. The killers left behind no traces of a struggle, making the crime even more chilling. Numerous theories were proposed, and several suspects were investigated, including a man named Reverend George Kelly. Kelly was arrested but later released after his confession was deemed unreliable. Over the years, other theories, such as the involvement of a transient killer or a jealous lover, have emerged. Who committed the Villisca Axe murders? Was the killer known to the victims, or was this an attack by a stranger? Why has this case remained unsolved for over a century? Number 4. 1966. Disappearance of the Beaumont children. The Beaumont children, Jane, 9, Arna, 7, and Grant, 4, disappeared without a trace from a beach in Adelaide, Australia in 1966. Despite various investigations and theories, their fate remains unknown. On January 26, 1966, the Beaumont children went missing from Glenelg Beach in South Australia. They were last seen playing near the water, and there were reports of a man talking to them shortly before they vanished. Their bodies have never been found, and no suspects have ever been conclusively linked to the crime. Over the years, the case has been investigated by numerous police agencies, with theories ranging from a lone abductor to the possibility of multiple perpetrators involved. Despite advances in forensic technology, the children's disappearance remains unsolved. Were the children kidnapped by someone they knew? What happened to their bodies? Could there have been a connection to other unsolved child disappearances in the region? Number 5. 1996. The murder of JonBenet Ramsey. The murder of 6-year-old beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey remains one of the most publicized unsolved crimes in America. JonBenet was found dead in the basement of her family's Boulder, Colorado home on December 26, 1996. She had been strangled with a garrote, and there were signs of sexual assault. A ransom note was discovered in the home, but no money was ever demanded. The investigation focused on the Ramsey family, particularly JonBenet's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, as well as their brother Burke. However, the police were unable to gather enough evidence to charge anyone. There were also multiple theories, including the possibility that an intruder was involved, but none could be definitively proven. Did the Ramseys have something to do with JonBenet's death, or was an unknown intruder responsible? If an intruder was involved, why did they leave the ransom note without asking for money? Number 6. 1975. The murder of Jimmy Hoffa. Labor leader Jimmy Hoffa disappeared under mysterious circumstances in 1975, and his body has never been found. Theories surrounding his murder continue to abound. On July 30th, 1975, Jimmy Hoffa was last seen outside the Malchus Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. He was supposed to meet with 2 mafia figures, but he was never seen again. Hoffa's ties to organized crime made him a target of the mafia. Some suspect he was killed because of his attempts to regain control of the Teamsters Union. The FBI investigated the case thoroughly, but despite various confessions and theories, Hoffa's body was never discovered. Was Hoffa murdered by the mafia, or did he stage his own disappearance? Will the mystery of his disappearance ever be solved? Number 7. 1954. The murder of Marilyn Shepard. Marilyn Shepard was murdered in her home in Bay Village, Ohio, in 1954. Her husband, Dr. Sam Shepard, was initially convicted of her murder, but later exonerated after spending years in prison. Marilyn Shepard was bludgeoned to death in her home, while her husband Sam was asleep in another room. Sam Shepard claimed that an intruder broke into the house and attacked them both, but the police suspected him of being the murderer. Sam Shepard was convicted of his wife's murder and sentenced to life in prison. However, after years of legal battles, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned his conviction in 1966, citing a lack of evidence and the influence of the media. Sam was retried and acquitted in 1967. If Sam Shepard was innocent, who was responsible for Marilyn's death? Was the real murderer someone from their social circle, or was it a random assailant? Number 8. 1993. The murders of the West Memphis Three. In 1993, 3 young boys were brutally murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas, leading to the controversial conviction of 3 teenagers known as the West Memphis Three. The bodies of Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers were found in a drainage ditch. They had been brutally murdered, and the case drew immediate attention due to the gruesome nature of the crime. 3 teenagers, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly, were convicted based on questionable confessions and circumstantial evidence. However, new evidence and the recantation of the confessions eventually led to their release in 2011 after spending years on death row. If the West Memphis Three were innocent, who is the real killer? Did the investigation target the wrong suspects due to panic over the murders being connected to satanic rituals? Number 9. 1930s, the Cleveland Torso Murders. During the 1930s, a series of grisly murders were committed in Cleveland, Ohio, known as the Cleveland Torso Murders. The victims were found decapitated and dismembered, but the killer was never identified. Between 1935 and 1938, at least 12 victims were found dismembered, their heads and limbs missing. The killer, known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, left behind no clues and was never caught. Various suspects were considered, including a suspect named Frank Dolezal, but no arrests were made. The investigation was plagued by the lack of forensic evidence, and the murders were never solved. Who was the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run? Was the killer a serial murderer, or was there a single motivation behind the killings? Number 10. 1987. The murder of Marie Ringer. Marie Ringer, a high school student from Los Angeles, was found murdered in a remote canyon in 1987. Despite several leads, her killer was never caught. Marie Ringer was abducted and killed, and her body was dumped in a remote canyon. Police initially suspected her ex-boyfriend, but never had enough evidence to charge him. Various suspects were considered over the years, but no one was ever convicted of Marie's murder. The case remains open, but the mystery of her killer endures. These real-life criminals who got away with murder continue to haunt the families of their victims and the investigators who were unable to bring them to justice. These cases remind us of the importance of perseverance in the pursuit of justice, and the chilling possibility that some perpetrators may remain unidentified forever. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for next mysterious videos.